Hey there, cats and kitties. I'm the Blues Man, sXeblues, and this is going to be a brief little set of reviews for the Primal Paper Comics / Manos publishing title, Red Knight. This is a pretty cool book, I have to say, and it comes from one of YouTube's very own, movie / comic reviewers, TheRealManos, aka Justin Cristelli. And I was very interested in this because when he showed the concept image for the character, it just stood out to me. I mean, I dig comic books, I dig comic book characters, and I dig chess. And, the Red Knight, as he has, the Red Knight on his shirt and everything like that, it definitely intrigued me to begin with. And so I'm going to be talking about this in the sort of similar format that I always do comic reviews, except to say because this is an indie book, and, not like one of DC's New 52, which is more widely, recognized, and you see writers and artists, people know who they are. This is information I usually forgo when I discuss those books because you're already going to know all of that, and if not, you're going to be able to find it readily. And this is a book where, because it's an indie book, it's not as widely known, and I think it's important to call out the people involved. So, of course, the characters were created and the stories primarily written by Justin Cristelli. The art is done by J.C. Grande, and I am really impressed with it. It carries with it a sort of manga-ish feel with the colorless pages and the way he draws some of his faces and some of the action, sequences, and it's just really cool. And then it's edited by Lindsay Mays, who, for anyone who's watched TheRealManos' channel, he ends all his videos with "Push the button, Lindsay," and I love the reference to that in the back of the book, where the eventual letters section will begin, which is another concept I think is cool, that he's actually going to have that interaction with his readers. But to set the template for this particular book, it's its own universe where superheroes exist and have existed for a while, and actually being a superhero or vigilante, as it were, is seen as illegal. I guess there are some, card-carrying members of like a sort of Justice League-esque team, and superheroes that can operate freely because they work in concert with law enforcement and things like that in the government. And Red Knight himself, aka Todd McLean, has always dreamed of being one of these superheroes. He has, pretty strong passion against crime and the criminal element taking over his hometown, essentially. And so this is pretty much him and a couple of friends, taking it into their own hands and putting that to work for them. But essentially, we begin this issue with a flashback daydream he's having of 10 years prior. It's Todd and a girl watching the skies overhead for Captain Danger, who I guess is the sort of Superman equivalent. And, he comes by at the same time every night. And in their awe, they begin discussing superheroes, and really kind of, this gives us an idea of what we're looking at. These are two sort of divergent viewpoints on, whether superheroes are a good thing or a bad thing, the repercussions of it. And I like that we're kind of investigating that a little bit in this dialogue. But in spite of their opposing viewpoints, in a little bit of a sweet moment, the scene culminates with them sharing a kiss between them, which is kind of cool. And but this is where it actually picks up, because Todd is then roused by having his name called as he and his partners Nonstop and Fireball are staking out a soon-to-be unfolding drug deal across the street. And I love how pissed he is that she actually uses his real name rather than, the codename Red Knight. The look on his face is priceless. But essentially we follow up with the actual drug deal as it's about to unfold. We meet the first real baddie of the issue, Brick, and his crew. And, it seems like this drug deal begins as planned, so to speak. Although the man and woman who come in, he sends the woman over to the bar. I guess, one ear too many on the business at hand. But that is essentially the selling of BAM, a drug that gives you superpowers, which is actually an interesting concept. I mean, in this world where heroes would be illegal unless they were, as I say, card-carrying members, it calls back to me that whole era of prohibition when, alcohol, the buying and selling of it, possession even, was illegal and could get you arrested, and speakeasies were operating essentially by, mob elements especially. So I like this little touch in this framework. But this is when, actually, Red Knight and crew decide to crash the party. and as a result, guns start blazing, and Todd actually gets hit and goes down, and he's seemingly out for the count. This is where Brick and his crew make their bold sort of rebuttal, in that at least one of them has superpowers of her own, and this is when we find out that the woman who was sent to the bar, Martha Brown, is actually a detective. And Brick is making, sort of his bold statement to her, get the cops out of here because the place is now surrounded, being that, as we find out, this was all a sting operation. And Todd, sort of stammering on the floor in the wake of all of this, finally has it revealed to himself that he's apparently bulletproof, which is another interesting element. So he opens a can of whoop-ass on Brick, and basically after knocking out Brick and one of his cronies, Martha jumps over the bar and congratulates him, great, thanks for saving the day, you're under arrest. Because, as I say, Red Knight's a vigilante, he's not a card-carrying member of the superhero league or whatever. And as it turns out, at this point, Brick is also not out for the count, as he had an ace in the hole. And I'm going to leave it there. The issue pretty much ends in a cliffhanger face-off, something I definitely suggest you check out. So, but that's, pretty much all I have to say on the issue. As for showing a page, I love the page where Red Knight and his team have crashed the party, rather ineloquently as I put it, and because, they don't really have a plan of action. They know they're going to crash the party, but other than that, they don't have any kind of line of dialogue or anything like that. It's really a funny moment. So, as for rating the issue, I'm going to be rating it 3.5 out of 5. This actually marks the first time I'm doing a 1.5 system. Usually it's just solid 3, 4, 5, that type of thing. But no, the only thing that really bogged this one down a little bit, just very slightly, is some of the art suffered probably as a result of the printing style, and there were some places where whether space constraints or whatever, there was some dialogue and lettering problems, but other than that, solid book, and it definitely was, as I figured it would be, something I enjoyed. So that'll actually be moving us on to issue number 2. We begin this issue right where we left off at the end of issue number 1, with Martha Brown and Todd, aka Red Knight, facing off against a hulking Brick. Brick has thrown a car with an unwitting family inside it against a building, and it's stuck in the wall, and Martha agrees for Red Knight to go and save them, leaving Brick to her as long as Red Knight promises to turn himself in afterward. And as the epic scene culminates with a pretty cool and effective little trick that actually calls back to Martha's training, there's a great moment just before Todd hightails it that he looks back down at her, and seeing him take off, she offers that at least he's earned a little bit of a head start. But, back at the precinct a little later, Brown and her partner during the drug sting Edge are being berated by their boss for effectively the destruction that unfolded during the operation, as well as finding no leads to the source of the BAM, the drug that gives superpowers, and subsequently letting Red Knight slip away. Upon the conclusion of their ass-chewing, Martha and her partner split up to interrogate Todd's friends and fellow vigilantes, Fireball and Nonstop, where the emphasis is made that until they cooperate by giving their full names and the names of their accomplices, life won't be getting any easier anytime soon for them. Meanwhile, we meet up with a Mr. Sinclair, presumably a mob boss type, roughing up one of his own henchmen for not cleaning out the rat traps, before an impromptu meeting with a Mr. Powell. Powell's bringing information from an informant that is in the police department, that they've successfully caught 2 of the 3 heroes during the drug deal gone bad, and that the third is actually still at large, as Sinclair notes, none of which has been released to the media at this point. And with a somewhat ominous implication toward the end of the scene that a Dr. Banks has research that should be coming to a payoff sometime soon, we then transition to catch up with Todd in his alternate job, which is running his uncle's bar. He's tired and he's understandably worried about his friends having been caught. He's probably a little more worried about them giving him up. But it takes his uncle basically giving him a pep talk along the lines of, the show must go on regardless, and they actually both agree to go out the following night. At the same time, Detective Brown and her partner are on the way to check out Wendy's, aka Fireball's, apartment. Brown believes there's a lot more overall going on to the situation, and as they find upon entering the place, it's been completely ransacked. Amidst the chaos, she actually locates Wendy's cell phone, and rather precariously, it has a text message ready and waiting on it. presumably coming from Todd. Later that evening, we see Todd and his uncle are out on the prowl in their makeshift van, and not a heck of a lot is actually unfolding, so the uncle decides to take a pit stop. It's right about the time that they decide to do this that calls for help cry out, and using a new gel pellet gun that his uncle's created, Red Knight stops two would-be thieves, a couple of teenagers as it were, stealing beer. He subsequently takes them out as well as their car, resulting in the store clerk turning on him, and basically he hightails it quite understandably as his uncle looks on. As this is unfolding, we follow up with Python and Pop Girl. They were the associates of Brick in the drug deal gone bad in issue number 1, both of which are under guard and recuperating in the hospital. Enter the epically badass-looking villains Overkill and Surge, who've come to kill them. And, needless to say, havoc ensues. Upon the conclusion of this deed, they contact the same Dr. Banks that Mr. Sinclair was talking about earlier, and the gist is that, as the issue ends, Red Knight is next on the hit list. So, as for showing a page in this particular issue, I want to go with the debut of the pretty kick-ass-looking Overkill and Surge, decked out completely with their skulls, and I have to say, Overkill himself kind of reminds me of Lobo for DC Comics fans. But as for rating this issue, I'm going to go solid 4 out of 5. I feel like some of the kinks in the first issue were completely worked out, and the art is just fantastic. So that's pretty much all I'm going to have to say on these two books, and I highly suggest you check it out. Please take a look down below for the channel information as well as contact information of Justin Cristelli, aka TheRealManos, because I'm sure he'd appreciate you taking a look at his books. And otherwise, I hope you're all doing well, so I will sign off for now, and I'll catch you later. Peace.